to talk to Kelly Shaw, who joins us now in studio, who is the CEO of Uka Island. And you feel that report cards are incredibly valuable.
They certainly are. They're the only feedback, really, that parents have to understand how their children are learning. And so that's invaluable for parents to understand how they can help their own children to be able to learn.
So what is Uka Island exactly?
So Uka Island is a personalized game-based reading program. And really what we do is we teach children 3 to 7 how to read. And we do that in this wonderful virtual world where children 3 to 7 are the heroes, and they teach Uka elves how to read. And along the way, they have avatars, and they earn Uka Mist, and as they play the games, which are all based on research and the science of how to read, they earn Uka points and they can spend it. They can, buy funky hair for their avatars. They get to buy pets in the pencil playground. And anyway, kids love it. It's a super, super engaging game.
And what parents love about it is that you get a report card every week sent to you?
That's right. That's something that's very unique about our reading program, and that parents receive a report card in their inbox every Friday afternoon. We send them out about 3 o'clock, and we do that because we know parents are super busy. So if it pops into your email in your inbox, you're more likely when you head off for the weekend or Saturday morning, instead of maybe turning on the TV or turning on, their child's favorite cartoon, get them on Uka Island. The kids are playing. They don't even realize they're learning, but like I said, it's all based on research and it's pedagogically sound. And instead of, sitting in front of the TV, they really are learning to read.
Well, I love this, though, because over the years there have been many very good learning things that you could get for your child, but there was zero feedback. I mean, you would assume that by just doing it, they're getting something, and I'm sure they got something out of it. But as a parent, how wonderful to receive that feedback.
Yeah, and you know what was interesting is that we interviewed and surveyed hundreds and hundreds of parents, especially moms. And what we found was the consistent feedback we got was, we really don't understand what's going on at school. The only opportunity we have is that report card. There's typically a progress report card around this time of year, although with the strike, in Ontario anyway, it's pushed it to December. And then there's a report card in the winter and then end of the year, and that's it. And so most parents told us, you know what, it'd be wonderful to be able to understand how my child is learning, and in particular learning to read, because you have to be able to read to be able to learn other subjects. So the idea that if they could have more access to information, that's exactly what parents wanted. And so that's how we got to the point where we took all the data. We collect over 10,000 points of data per child as they go through Uka Island, because that data creates a personalized path for that child. So every child plays the game differently. And then the parents receive that report card. It tells them not only how long and how often their child has played, but it's broken down to foundational skills. There are 5 skills you need to be able to learn to read. And it builds on those 5 skills. So it breaks down. The report card actually shows you how are they doing in phonics, how are they doing in phonetic awareness, which is blending sounds, how are they doing in vocabulary, and reading, overall fluency and reading comprehension.
And so does the game advance the child based at their own level?
That's right.
Perfect.
It advances the child. So no child will go through the actual same gameplay. Although they don't realize it. You could be sitting beside another child and they don't know whether they're doing well or not doing well versus their age and grade level, because it's so unique and different for each child. But in educational psychology terms, that's called being in the zone of proximal development. And that's really critical. If you can have a child learning in their zone of proximal development, it means they're going to get the maximum learning out of that situation. And that's what our adaptive learning platform does. It's innovative technology. It makes sure every child is in their zone of proximal development as they're learning to read.
Okay, so let's talk about one of my daughters has what they called a learning disconnect. And they went through in that it's a written verbal disconnect. So, I mean, if you ask her to, she reads more books than any human, but if you ask her to tell you back the story verbally, perfect. If you ask her to write anything down, not so good, and the spelling is atrocious. And the experts said, because we thought she was dyslexic,
Right.
but the experts said, no, not dyslexic. There's this written, mental written disconnect, and she should not have been taught spelling phonetically. That was the worst thing.
Mm-hmm.
She should have been, the rote, writing it over and over and over again. So does the app help with children that may be like that?
We do. We are great. We are used in some schools for special education. Every child is different, so just it's great hearing about your daughter and your own daughter's needs and what's specific to her. But again, each child's different. One of the core problems about teaching a child to read is that it is something you need to teach. It's not natural. It's not like speaking or listening. It is something science has shown that it is something you really have to teach in a very systematic scientific approach to it. You can't learn to read just based on phonics. So it is about those 5 foundational skills.
And go through the 5?
So the 5 are phonics, phonetic awareness, fluency, vocabulary, and reading comprehension. And you have to be able to learn all the sub-steps, and that's what Uka Island does. You have to be able to learn all 5 in conjunction. And what can happen is some children maybe struggle in all, but quite a lot of children, actually specifically 25%, need some help. It means they're not in the 43% that struggle. But they need some help. But they're not in the 32% that are going to pick it up and learn to read no problem. So what can happen, though, is that a child might be really wonderful in 3 but not 2, or maybe great in 4 but not 1. And so without seeing any of the actual psychometric reports on your daughter, I don't know which one or how.
She's almost 21 now.
Yeah.
She's okay.
She's doing fine.
She's at university. She's doing okay.
Well, then she's at university. She is more than off and running. So whatever you did as a mom certainly helped.
A lot of reading.
You are listening to What She Said on SiriusXM 167 Canada Talks. Sharon Caddy, Kate Wheeler in studio, and our guest Kelly Shaw, the CEO of Uka Island, and we're learning all about the steps involved in learning to read. Now, the reports that parents receive from their child using Uka Island if you're seeing consistent issues with one area of the 5, perhaps, or 2, or whatever it is, can this also serve then as a signal maybe that the parent needs to go on to further investigation to identify specifically, as with Kate's daughter when she was young, what the problem might be?
Absolutely. So when in the report cards, it identifies what the child's doing well, and it's broken down to those 5 foundational skills. But it also gives recommendations on what to do if they're not doing well for that week. And of course, what's really important about all learning is that it's consistent effort. So it's, not, whether it's Uka Island or any other form of learning, it's, not just doing it occasionally or binging and then not coming back after 3 weeks. It's more consistent effort. And so you'll see consistently week over week with the report cards different patterns, but we give recommendations. It's a great way, just like any report card a child gets at school, it really is focused on and praising the effort and looking at patterns, report card over report card. So perhaps at Uka Island consistently, you might find that maybe there's a problem with phonetic awareness or vocabulary, and that when you read a child's report card from school, you already have a sense of, maybe what should I look for? What kind of comments are coming up with English in their English language area in English, and it's a great springboard to have a conversation with a teacher. We have parents who bring, and teachers who love this, they bring the report cards, the Uka Island report cards, to the parent-teacher interviews. But it's really like any report card. It's looking for patterns. And most important about how to read a report card, any report card, is really about looking for and praising effort in the child, because every child's different. Some kids get great marks, but they're not putting a lot of effort in.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, but they're not really at their level of learning. They need to be challenged more, just like the reverse.
You're not reaching your full potential.
I was feeling someone got report cards that said that.
All right, we're going to head into a break. When we come back on the other side, we'll talk more with Kelly Shaw, the CEO of Uka Island. We're going to find out how this all came about and the research that Dr. Kay McPhee did, why she did it, what her granddaughter's doing and exactly how the name came about. So stay with us. I will tell you that we have Kelly Shaw, the CEO of Uka Island, in studio with us. It's well, how would you describe a reading program app for children?
Yeah, I would say it's a game-based reading program, and we're like Netflix. You can play it across all all devices. We're in the iTunes store, so you can just Google Uka, like that's oo. It's one of the first sounds you learn. Oo, so OOKA Island. We also have a website, so UkaIsland.com.
So how did the name come about?
Well, interesting. So oo, the two O's together, is one of the first sounds you learn when you learn to read English, and there are actually 44 sounds you need to learn at the very, very beginning when you're learning to read English in particular, or every language, phonetic-based language, has a different series of sounds, and English happens to have 44. And so oo's one of them. And we had a lot of children in our testing as we developed our program, and they just seemed to really take to the word Uka, and that sort of spun off to creating Uka elves, and Uka Island, and Uka elves are the elves that the kids teach to read in the program.
Oh, that's cool. Now, who is Dr. Kay McPhee, and how did this all come about?
Well, Dr. Kay McPhee, I find her a really inspiring woman. I met her just a couple of years ago. And Dr. Kay McPhee started in education because her son was born profoundly hearing impaired. He had about 5% hearing. And that really changed her whole life as a parent, as a mom. She dedicated her life to figuring out, helping her son Lowell, how he was going to learn and how he was going to thrive. She always says, I just didn't want him to live in this world of silence. So she spent a lot of time looking at what she could do. She ended up going to California, being trained in California, doing some graduate courses at McGill, and she ended up, she's an educator, she was a teacher, she ended up being the principal of School of the Deaf in Prince Edward Island. And through her education and through working with her own son, she really developed a way to teach the hearing impaired how to read. And you can imagine, we were talking about the 5 foundational skills that you need to master to read. Phonetics, phonomic awareness, that's sounds. Yeah. So really fascinating. She ended up just through happenstance having a number of doctors send children her way, and they said, well, if you can teach hearing impaired children to read, you can teach anyone to read. And so just eventually different doctors and different people, teachers, educators, started sending her children who were struggling to read, and she started to teach them. So it sort of all happened very organically from her own experience as a mom, and then becoming an educator, and then dedicating her life to teach children to read, not just the hearing impaired. And so eventually based on this, she started her own research, created her own method, and retired, and had a second career. She founded a company called Spell Read, and that company was an intervention reading company. So that company really focused on the 43% of people who really struggle. Well, actually in Canada, 48% of people between 15 and 65 fall below reading levels. Really? They're functionally illiterate. And in the United States, it's a little higher. In the United States, 68% of children in grade 4 fall below the reading level.
Really?
So you can imagine that an intervention-based program and company that's backed by research is needed. And so that's what she did, and she ended up selling that company to Kaplan. And the reason she did is because she said, there are so many challenges with older children and adults when they are functionally illiterate. If I really want to prevent the program, I really want to prevent the problem from happening. How can we teach children properly, and how can we reach as many children as possible? And her vision was that if we can use technology, we can reach as many children as possible. And make it accessible to as many children as possible.
And that's so important. When you give numbers like you did with people, adult people who are functionally illiterate, who's teaching the next generation of children to read? The assistance is fantastic. Also, I love that the science, the research is all there, but it's the inclusion of the parent that I love the most. Because I really think that perhaps the parent may even be benefiting from the program themselves in some way.
That's an interesting, I think every parent wants their child to thrive in life and succeed, and learning to read is a big piece of that. But I think you're right, and I think that, probably there are ways that we could explore to get the parents more involved, because you're right. Given the stats, 48% are functionally illiterate themselves.
So what is the most important thing to look for when you are reading your child's report card, whether it's from Uka Island or from school?
Yeah.
Well, really, you want to praise effort and not results. That's the big picture. When you read a report card, every child is on their own at that point in time, is at their own development path, their own development level. And so what you want to really look for, and how to read a report card, is you really want to look at comments. You want to sort of read between the lines. So, for example, a teacher might say something like, "We're continuing to work on focusing in class." That's an example of a positive way of saying,
they're not paying attention.
They're not paying attention.
Comment.
And that's a really good signal for parents to say, I might be able to help my child. I might be able to jump in there, and I might be able to help a little bit more at home. So there's a great way, if you're the one opening up that conversation during parent-teacher interviews. And even not even waiting for parent-teacher interviews, if you're noticing that this is an issue even beforehand, that's great too. But I think it always helps when parents open the door to those kind of conversations with teachers, because teachers don't want to be negative. Teachers are in it because they really want to teach children.
Well, I have one that's still, I'm finishing grade 12 this year, and I have found in the past 4 years at least that most teachers through their school website will even have an email available, and you can have ongoing interaction if you so choose, which I find really, it's great. Instead of calling and getting a voicemail, and you don't know how often they check it, and this is direct contact. And I find most of the teachers, I've only reached out once or twice in the past 4 years, but you get immediate response, and you're engaging with them and finding out what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's another example of technology. It's fabulous. I think teachers are really engaged. And if they find, most importantly, if they find a parent cares and is engaged, they're more likely to help your child at home.
So then, how do you have a productive conversation with your children about their report cards?
Well, I mentioned praising efforts, not results, because, like I said, you might have a child who has a high marks, but they don't really put a lot of effort. It comes really easy to them. And the reverse, you might have a child that really works really hard, and you might notice that they don't have high marks, but you might notice that there was improvement from one report card to another, or one grade, end of the school year, to this report card coming up. So I think that's really important. Praise efforts, not results. And again, looking for improvements from one report card to the other. The other big piece about having a productive conversation is you really, really want to focus on making it their child's report card. So you really want to look at asking them about goals that they want to set. What are they proud of? So opening a really productive conversation could look at, what are you really proud of on your report card? What would you like to improve? Those are really important, because it's you really want to encourage the child to own the report card themselves. That this is their learning, not yours. And that's really hard, especially when kids are little. But the earlier that conversation, getting into those type of conversations, even as kindergarten and grade 1. You're not going to get the same answers, but as children get older, they can present the report card to their parents. When they're younger, you can read it to them and with them and have this very simple conversation. What are you really proud of?
So how do you get Uka Island?
Well, you can go on our website, which is www.ukaisland.com. You can also go to Apple's iTunes store. We're in the education and the kids section, and you can just search under Uka Island, so OOKA Island. And we're soon to be in Google Play.
Nice.
Yeah.
And does it cost? Is it How much is it?
Well, you can try it for free. So we're 24 levels because we actually go right from emergent literacy. So what you would start at right from the beginning sounds when you're, 3.5, all the way up to mid-grade 2. And so if you're already a little older, the technology will jump you forward. It'll create your personalized path, so you're not going to do, not spend too much time on the very younger levels. But you can try it for free. But then if you like it, if your child likes it, and so far we've had 23,000 kids play. But it's a monthly subscription, so you can spend $9.99 US, which is $11.99 Canadian a month, or you can just buy 1 year. So in Canada, that's $100.
Yeah.
And that $100 takes you for 12 months, and it really does teach your child to read. If you compare that to going to a tutoring center.
Oh, yeah.
And I did that. I'm one of those alpha moms. I took my daughter to a tutoring center, which is another reason why I got interested in this. And it was like $2,400 for the year.
That's a good deal.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly Shaw, very much for coming in and telling us all about Uka Island. And again, you can check it out at ukaisland.com.
Click the channel subscribe button for full-length interviews and more from What She Said here on YouTube.